Did you grow up with religion?
Yes.
And how seriously did you take it as a kid?
Grew up in a Christian home. Grew up going to church. Grew up and all that. Was very much when I was a kid, like very much into like Sunday school, vacation Bible school. These were all things that I was a part of. I accepted Jesus in my heart when I was 5. And at that point, I think I just took it to the, like, growing up in elementary school and even middle school was like, I was a nice kid. I was a good person. Those type of things. And so I don't know how much it was really reality in my life in terms of how serious I personally took it. It was more something I just knew, and this is what we did. When I was 13, was my grandmother had passed away, and that was a really hard thing for me. And so I got kind of angry at the question of like, God, why did you do that? That seems so wrong. And I had to really wrestle with, did I really believe in all this religion, Christianity stuff or not? And it was when I was 13 with Mrs. Parker, who subs here now. She was my teacher. Who I sat down and just had a frank conversation about who God is and that. So about that time in my life.
Did you grow up wanting to be a principal or in the education department?
I grew up wanting to be a teacher.
Oh, okay.
I always wanted to be a teacher. That was kind of my bent. I really love working with kids. I thought initially I'd want to do like elementary school because the little kids are cute. But I started more and more feeling like God was saying, no, your gifting's more for middle and high school kids. I never wanted to be a principal. That was not on my radar. But a few years ago, Mr. Osgood began kind of saying, hey, you're good at administration, you're good at this. And so that's kind of the path. But I didn't set out to do this, if that makes sense.
What were your parents like?
My mom and my dad they were great. Very much steady people. The commitments that they made were commitments that they kept. I could count on them.
Yeah.
If they said they were going to do something, they did it for me. I came to feel very safe because I trusted them. I believed in them. They were very solid in their Christian faith. That meant a lot to them in terms of growing up. I think my dad was he loved sports, and that's where I grew to love sports so much. From a very early age, I watched games with my dad, and that was very much part of our family culture, was going to games together, being supportive of teams and things like that.
What's your favorite sport?
My favorite sport to play is volleyball. Like that's what I played all through high school.
Yeah.
My favorite sport to watch, I really love to watch football. That's one of my favorite sports to watch. So.
Nice. Have you experienced racism or sexism in your life?
Not necessarily racism in terms of that. I have experienced sexism in terms of, I think a lot of times that perception that girls can't do what boys do. I remember from in high school, we had a boys volleyball team and a girls volleyball team, and it was like, the girls could never beat us, we're boys, and you're like, come on. Or even to the sense of, when I was working as like a camp counselor and different things, knowing that there, for some people, was a perceived that men were this way and women were this way, and that men had a voice and women just kind of did things and didn't have a voice. I think I experienced that in terms of even at college, feeling that sometimes that the female opinion didn't hold as much weight as the male opinion did in a certain thing. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you've made a positive impact on the world today? If so, how?
I think so. I think not in a grandiose way of like, whoa.
But just being in education.
Yeah, I think so with kids. One of my greatest moments is when kids that I've taught come back and visit, or you hear how great they're doing. I mean, even I take great pride and feel good about, like I said earlier, Miss Reynolds and Miss Mandel and some of the people that I taught and invested in, and now they're teaching and investing in kids. That's a cool thing. I just this week had a girl that I coached and taught was here, and it's cool to see that legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, yeah, I think so.
Do you consider yourself... Wait, no. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh goodness. I don't know so much that it's a superpower, but if I could not worry as much, I think that would be really helpful for me in the job that I have and in my own children and my family and things like that. If I could have a superpower of seeing the future and trusting that things will work out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I could have that, that would be really helpful in my life. I think so.
What major events happened in the world when you were a kid?
Well, the Berlin Wall fell.
Communism
Communism ended in the Soviet Union. In terms of the breakup of the Soviet Union, I think.
It can be like your youth, like college.
The Challenger. I remember being in 5th grade when the Challenger exploded and being like, oh my word, that's tragic. 9/11 was a huge event. Even before that, though, the Persian Gulf War that was like the first war during my life in terms of what I remember. And everyone was tying yellow ribbons around everything and super pro-America. And it was interesting how quickly that changed, how quickly, soldiers weren't treated super great and all those kind of things. So it was interesting how when it started, everyone was like, "Whoa!" But then as it lingered longer, I think, than people thought, as more time passed, it became less of that sort of positive support of that, I think.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Southern California. I've always been a Southern Californian. I went to school here at Village. I went to college at Azusa Pacific. So I've been in Southern California my whole life. SoCal kid.
What advice would you give to the youth in this day and age?
I think my biggest piece of advice is use your voice, but don't just scream at people. I think in today's world, there's a lot of yelling, not necessarily physical yelling, but words go back and forth, and without people really listening to each other. So my biggest piece of advice is use your voice, but also listen. I think the people who really, if I look back in history, and some of the people that I think were world changers were listeners. They took in and then they spoke, as opposed to let me just blast information or my opinion. So I think it would be listen and use your voice.
Okay, that's it.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. Got that done.